Welcome to Click for IB Biology. We're looking at the ligand called insulin. This is a hormone produced in the pancreas and works at a distance. There's a blank version of this presentation, a PDF, that's linked in down in the description, where you'll also find a PDF which has 10 questions based on this video with answers so that you can consolidate your understanding of the work that we're doing here. So let's take a look at the action of the ligand insulin in signal transduction. And so, of course, as a hormone, insulin is produced in the endocrine tissue, and that particular endocrine tissue is the organ known as the pancreas. And even within the pancreas, there are specialized groups of cells which are called the islets of Langerhans. And these produce insulin and release this into the blood in response to high levels of glucose in our bloodstream. And so the hormone insulin travels through the blood, and its targets include the liver, muscle cells, and adipose cells. And the function of the insulin is to store the sugar in the liver, muscle cells, and adipose tissue as the polysaccharide, the insoluble polysaccharide, glycogen. Now, higher level students should recall that in protein synthesis, they have studied the synthesis of insulin as we go through pre-pro insulin modification. And so you can add this to your understanding of that particular topic. Now, in this particular case of insulin's action, we're going to be focusing on its action in muscle cells and the introduction into the cell membrane of what are called GlUT4 transporters, as opposed to those in the liver, which are the GlUT2 transporters. These are present all the time, actually. But in the case of the action of insulin produced in the pancreas, traveling through the blood to a muscle or a fat cell, this results in the introduction of GlUT4 transporters into the cell membrane. So let's look at that in more detail. So insulin is traveling through the blood from the pancreas in response to high glucose levels, the blood being here. And here we have the receptor tyrosine kinase. So this is the receptor molecule, and two insulin molecules are required, and this causes the RTK to combine together. So they come together once they're in this form here on the insulins on the receptor sites, and this activates the transformation of tyrosine into the phosphorylated tyrosine on this side here. And that's tyrosine, which is actually part of the RTK receptor, rather. Now, this tyrosine phosphate leads through another cascade event, which is fairly complex. So a number of steps, A leading to B, B to C, and C to D, and so forth. So there's a number of steps that we're not going to specify here, where tyrosine would be our A, and we're going to pick the cascade up at the end at point D with vesicle. So this is illustrating a vesicle, and in the membrane of the vesicle are the GlUT4 transporter proteins. And these vesicles then migrate to the cell membrane. There's fusion with the cell membrane, and as a consequence of that, the GlUT4 becomes incorporated. So the transporter protein becomes incorporated into the cell membrane. And then what can happen is that the glucose can then be transported into the muscle cell. Of course, the glucose will then be polymerized into glycogen, which is insoluble and won't affect osmosis within the cytoplasm, the sarcoplasm of the muscle cell. So the steps are insulin docking with the receptor's phosphorylation of tyrosine, the migration of the vesicle with GlUT4 to the membrane fusion, transporter transporting of glucose, and then to finish it off, we have the conversion of glucose into glycogen, into the insoluble form, the granulated form, which we often see in micrographs of muscle cells. So this reminder that this happens in muscle cells, and adipose, the transportation into liver cells, is a slightly different mechanism. So operating at a distance, we have insulin there, another example of a ligand bringing about a signal transduction, the transduction being the storage of glucose. There's the link to the next example in our syllabus. Chance to subscribe to the channel, very much appreciated. There's the playlist for your convenience to see all the videos in this particular topic on chemical signaling.